Should I just start? Or? Okay. 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 Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I'm Rania Mustafa. I was invited today to talk about qualities of effective community leaders. The way I present, I'm very interactive. So I know there are not many of you here in the room today, but I want us to be as interactive as possible, inshallah. So today's agenda is we're going to start off with a little exercise to get us warmed up, not physically, mentally. And then we're going to talk about what makes up a community, who are community leaders, management versus leadership, the 5 levels of leadership, 10 characteristics of a good leader, and 10 things you can do better to be a good leader. As you can tell, I'm very ambitious. I'm trying to get through everything. I don't know if we'll get through it all, but inshallah we'll try our best to get through as much as possible. So to start off, I have an exercise which is a scenario, and we're going to be going through it together. So I'm going to read part of it, and then I need you all to tell me what you think you would do. Okay? Yes? Awesome. Okay. So we're talking about the cycle of poverty, and the person we're focusing on is Ahmed. So we're all going to pretend we're Ahmed. You are a 19-year-old Palestinian-American male living in a household with an income of around $17,000 per year. You have a range of opportunities from which to decide. As a class or as a group, let's choose the best option at each decision point. These are my children. So as a group, we're going to decide the best option for each decision point. So the first problem is you need some money. So the options we have is number 1, sell illegal substances for quick cash. Number 2, get a legal job. Number 3, hang out with friends and complain about your situation. Which of these 3 options do you think Ahmed should do? 2, right? Everyone agrees with 2? Awesome. Okay, so you're going to get a legal job. So you decide to get a legal job. You begin to look at newspaper ads and Indeed and all those fun things. You find a total of 5 places that are hiring near you. Now you should either 1, forget it, it's too much effort. 2, drop by the workplaces and ask them to hire you. Or 3, create a resume and formally apply. Which do you think he should do? What should Ahmed do? So Saha says 3. You think 2? What else? Okay, so it's either 2 or 3. So majority would think create a resume. So you want to convey your seriousness, so you decide to create a resume, but you don't have access to a computer or a smartphone. You should 1, write your resume on notebook paper. 2, join the public library and use their computer and printer. Or 3, give up too hard. Okay, what do we think? 2. Okay, so join the public library and use their computer and printer. I know this isn't 100% with today's technology, but the idea is the same. So you're going to join the public library. You go to the library to become a member. You're turned down because you have no bill with your residence on it, nor do you have a credit card. You should, 1, apply for a credit card and wait to see if you'll be approved. 2, go back to the idea of writing the resume on notebook paper. Or 3, forget the library and ask an acquaintance with a computer to help out. What do we think? I see a 3. Anyone else? 3. Okay. So you're going to ask an acquaintance. You know someone who knows someone with a printer. They let you print up a resume. You call the 5 places, only 3 of which are still hiring at this point. You make an interview appointment. They tell you to dress business casual, but you don't own that type of clothing. You should 1, cancel the appointment. 2, steal the money and buy a suit. 3, wear the best, cleanest clothing you have, which is 3-year-old jeans, t-shirt, and sneakers. Which option do we think? Okay, which one is it? 3. Okay, yes. So you wear your best clothes. So you've got your resume and some clean clothing to wear. You make appointments for interviews at each of the 3 places. So the first interview, you go to your first interview to work the concession stand at a movie theater. You take too long to fill out the application, and the manager says, I'm so sorry, but this position is not going to work for you. The second interview, you go to your second interview at a local grocery store. You're applying to be a cashier. They take a look at your resume and tell you they can't hire you because you have no prior work experience. They also say they can't trust you with money because people in your position are too tempted to steal, and who can blame them? Your third interview is with a fast food chain. They also tell you that you have no work experience, but they are willing to make you a deal. They will consider hiring you for pay if you volunteer 8 shifts over the course of 2 weeks, and if you do well, then they will hire you. Are we seeing the dilemma that Ahmed's in? So this is the dilemma. Each time you go to this fast food chain from your house, you have to buy 2 round-trip transfer bus tickets at 8 times in 2 weeks. That adds up to $1.75 plus $1.75 times 8 trips equals $28. The fast food place will not pay for your transportation money, and will only hire you as a paid employee if you do well after working for free for 2 full weeks. So you're back to the original problem, which is you need some money. You're back to where you started, and the poverty cycle continues because of limited resources. So thank you for entertaining me with this. Now I have a question. So what does this have to do with community leadership? What did this, and again, I know this is a specific scenario with Ahmed, but you can apply these same scenarios and the same questions to, different scenarios and different people. So what do you think this has to do with community leadership? Helping the youth, that's one way to look at it. What else? I like interactions, so I need at least one more answer before I give you the answer. Yeah? Oh, community resources, okay. Community, okay, so the idea here is actually that it's a way to formally understand the community, and as a community leader, your job is to work with different social problems, right? So Ahmed was dealing with the social problem of poverty. There's many different ways that we could tackle it, and the idea of walking through those scenarios is that sometimes the answer is not as black and white as we think it is. Because sometimes you just say, oh, he needs to get a job. Okay, but does Ahmed have the resources to get a job? Is he able to get the job? And that's where, as community leaders, we need to change the way we think. Instead of it being black and white, and here are easy solutions that are giving out, and we be more interactive with our community and understand the social problems a little bit more. So that leads me to the next concept, which is what makes up a community. So this is I love this model, because the idea is that each individual is part of a larger community. So you have the individual, and you have different microsystems that are surrounded by this individual. And these are basically different relationships. So for example, at home, you have the child, sibling, parents. In religious settings like the masjid, you have the child, peers, adults. In neighborhoods, you have the child, adults, peers. In school, you have the child, teacher, peers. So in the first microsystems, you're looking at different, once removed relationships. So different relationships that affect the child. So can you, in many ways, if you're looking at this child, right, you can't really think of them without thinking of all these different relationships that this child embodies or is a part of, okay? Then you go to the second level, which is the relationships of the microsystems with the ecosystems. So it's the relationship with the home and the local industry, the religious setting with the school board, the neighborhood with the parents' workplace, and so on and so forth. Then you have the exosystems, which are systems that are not directly related to the child or the individual, but are more related with the macrosystems, which are different systems that control us or lead us as a society. So the idea of this whole image is that a lot of times what we do is we focus on the individual. And what do we say? We say, oh, the individual needs to get better. But what do we forget? We forget that this individual is entrenched in all of this. It's entrenched in all these different microsystems, all these different relationships, their exosystems and the macrosystems. And we have to keep that in mind. And I know I've given, for example, some different lectures here with, obviously more Islamic themed. And a lot of times it's that same idea that we have to keep in mind that we're Muslims growing up in America. And I know Sheikh Musa really relates to this with, the idea of Islam can be adapted to any place that you're at. So it's the same thing. If we think Islam can be adapted at any place we live in or any society we live in, why do we think that the individual doesn't change or one solution fits everybody? So this is really, really important when you're looking and understanding communities and how they work. And it really shifts your perspective, because especially when we're coming from our background and the way we see things, we tend to focus, again, just on the individual. But if we're trying to make change, it's looking at making change in these different spheres, that continue to affect the different spheres, the other spheres. So instead of just focusing on the individual, let's say, for example, you start working on different practices in a parent's workplace or different practices in media, and then seeing the ripple effects and everything else. And that's the job of the community leader, is to keep all of this in mind and to see how everything affects everything else. So, to summarize, who are community leaders? A community leader is a designation that is bestowed upon a person or group who are considered to be a representative of a community. So it's going back to this idea that it's someone representative in like a microsystem and potentially even an exosystem, like a person that exists within these. So you can have community leaders at a microsystem level, at an exosystem level, and even at a macrosystem level. They are often seen as influencers or well-doers who work for the welfare of people by solving problems. And this is really key, that a lot of the job of a community leader is solving problems. So it's trying to understand how best to figure out problems. And again, this is why this model is so important, because you have to keep all of this in mind and work to solve problems from all different angles. And raising important issues to highlight a sort of change that is required. And again, our goal is to create macro system or societal change. A lot of times with community leaders, it's like we start with the family, we go to the exosystems, and our goal is the macro system or societal change. Okay. And they focus on keeping their people together to work towards a common goal in their community. And that's also a very important quality of a community leader, is that we're working together. There's a team, there's people working together towards a common goal. So before we get into a little bit of detail, I wanted to just clarify one thing. There's the idea of management and there's the idea of leadership. So quickly, before looking too much in detail on this, what do you think are the main differences? Does anyone? I need two answers. Aya. Okay, so Aya said, leadership is more working with the people instead of it being a hierarchy. That's a good answer. Anyone else?
I think a leader was with the strategic plan and the vision and the total pictures, management implementation.
That's, yes, a great way to put it. So to summarize, management focuses on discipline, project management, negotiation, persuasion, ability to understand, public speaking, organization, supervision, attention to details, ability to follow plan, willingness to stand up, and goal setting and measuring. So this is when you're managing. So you're managing people, you're setting them, you're making them do the work, you're executing a plan, like Sheikh Musa said. Leadership is more of what Aya was saying, where it's active listening, it's coaching, there's empathy, you're figuring out how to motivate people, you're communicating effectively, you're delegating tasks to the people who best deserve those tasks, you're building and fostering a deeper understanding, you're innovating, you're thinking forward and of bigger things, your willingness to stand up to superiors for what's right and standing up for your values. You're exploring different goals and you're constantly reflecting. So a lot of times in many positions, we are in leadership positions, but we act as managers, where it's like, do this, do that, this is the plan, let's go, khalas, everyone, that's it. While in reality, we have to focus as leaders, which is that it's not you're just simply telling people what to do, but you're fostering their strengths and you're helping them grow as individuals towards a common goal. And both of them require interpersonal skills, supervisory abilities, technical knowledge, and decision making. And this is a lot of times what causes the overlap. People think, oh, I'm in a leadership position, so I'm a leader, but it's like, no, you're probably more handling things like a manager, and our goal is to handle things like a leader. So to explain it a little further, and I think this is a good way of illustrating and explaining it, there are 5 levels of leadership. So the first level is focused on your position, which means people follow you because they have to, right? So you're the supervisor, you're the boss, you're the teacher, whatever it may be, right? They're listening to you because your position requires that power, and that's the only reason people are listening to you, right? So that's the basic level of leadership. The second level is permission, which focuses on relationships. People follow you because they want to follow you, right? So it's not just, oh, this is my supervisor, so I have to listen. I want to listen to this person because they've invested in me, because we've built this relationship of trust, because we have this relationship with one another that I want to listen to this person. So this is the second one. The third one, which a lot of people aim to get to, is production, which focuses on results. People follow you because of what you have done for the organization, right? So this is usually people who have more years in an organization or more years in a community, and they say, you know what, this person accomplished X, Y, and Z. They know what they're talking about. I'm going to follow them. This person did that event successfully or led that team successfully. I'm going to follow them because of that. And then this is the I want to say, the ultimate goal, and then we're going to talk about pinnacle, which is people development. So people, which is reproduction, so people follow you because of what you have done for them. Now, what do you think that means? Before I explain it. And like I said, this is the ultimate goal for leadership, and then we get to the next level, which is like, I want to say the super goal. But what does it mean people follow you because of what you have done for them? Think loyalty. What else? Growth, yes. Aya? Inspiring them and helping them develop. So going back to this idea of moving from a manager to a leader, right? So if you are actively listening, if you're working with somebody and finding their growth and working on them and saying, you know what, these are your areas of strength, let's continue to build them. These are your areas of growth, let's continue to work on them. And you continue to invest in them day in and day out, people follow you because they know that you can make them a better person, right? So this is the goal for most people. Is to get to this point where you have all this down, plus people are not only following you because of what you've done for the organization, because of your position, because people want to follow you, but because you yourself have had a positive impact on them personally. The last one, which is pinnacle, which is respect. People follow you because of who you are and what you represent. And I say that this is the super goal because not many people achieve this. This is like Sayyidina Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, Gandhi, all these leaders that they've become they represent emotion, not emotion. They represent a movement. They represent something different. So they begin to represent something higher than anybody. And they become kind of like the face of this image. So like Prophet Muhammad is the face of Islam, and so this is pinnacle. So this is like the super goal that not everybody can achieve, and it's okay. This is not where we're trying to achieve, but some people in their lifetime get to that point. But our goal as leaders is to at least get to number 4, which is that you inspire the people that you work with to be the best version of themselves, that they want to continue to work with you and continue to grow. Okay, so 10 characteristics of good leaders. I'm going to take questions because we're actually doing a good place. I'm going to take questions at the end if anyone has any. But 10 characteristics of good leaders. So the first one is self-awareness. This is the most important thing. Any leader needs to know themselves better than they know anybody else. You have to think about it. If you're not fixing yourself, how can you fix anybody else, right? And fixing yourself is where it starts. لا يغيركم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم, right? So you need to change yourself, and then around you, the people will change. And don't do it with the intention of changing everybody else. If you're constantly, after every meeting, after everything, thinking, what did I do wrong? What could I do better? How can I improve? The people around you will do the same. So it's continuously building that self-awareness. Eager to learn and adapt. So if we're going back to Islam, the first ayah that came down was iqra, right? It's constantly learning, wanting to learn, wanting to figure out. There's no such thing as khatam al-ilm. There's no such thing as finish the knowledge. You have to be constantly wanting to learn more, to understand more, to figure out what's the next step, what am I missing, what else can I learn? Okay, maybe I have most of this understood, but there's this whole other world that I don't understand. Can I put myself in there? Can I try to understand it? And in addition, it's the willingness to adapt. So it's not only willingness to learn, but then it's the flexibility. So sometimes things aren't going your way. So figuring out how can I handle things despite them not going my way. Empathy, which is a really, really big one. So you have to be able to put yourself in other people's shoes and understand, back to this quick thing, is that everybody has a whole other system that's going around. So somebody can come into work and they could look really upset. And we can say, why are you upset? And like get really upset and say, this is unacceptable. Or we can think, you know what, let's give them their space. Maybe there's something happening today. Maybe something in their systems is out of balance. And then slowly you're able to build that trust and that empathy with the people you work with. Honesty and integrity. And this is, I want to say, one of the most important ones, especially in the world we live in today, is we need to be integrity. What does integrity mean? What does integrity mean? Because this is an important one. Does anyone have any idea? What does integrity mean? I'm good with awkward silences.
فاهمها في الليدرشيب اللي هو التفاعل مع الناس.
تفاعل مع الناس, yes. Yeah, yes, that's empathy, 100%. Integrity is doing what you're saying you're going to do, right? So if I'm saying, you know what, I'm going to help you do X, and then I turn my back and I go away and then you don't hear from me for like 6-7 months, that's someone who's not practicing integrity. But if I, for example, say, hey, listen, I'm working on this project, I have this idea, we're going to do it, actually following through is integrity, right? On that level. But it's also as simple as like, hey, I'm going to send you, we're going to set up a meeting to discuss this, right? And I just forget about you. That's without integrity. But if I'm like, you know what? No, let's do it right now. Let's set up this meeting. Let's work. That's integrity. And honesty, which is building on integrity, which is being honest with yourself and honest with those around you, right? So having and practicing honesty. Dedication towards a cause. So a lot of leaders are motivated by a specific cause, by something that, you know, fuels them to keep doing. So having that cause constantly in mind. Building on that service, this idea of wanting to give back to the community. Leadership is one of those things you cannot put a price tag on it. There's no amount of money that anybody can pay you in order to be the best leader, right? Is a huge part of it is service. And I want to say, even if you're getting paid the best of monies, the best salaries or the best money, you still need to focus on service because that's how you end up continuing to learn, continuing to adapt, continuing to understand beyond what you see. In addition, interpersonal skills. So this is really important, right? So if a leader doesn't know how to deal with people, right, are they really a leader? No, right? You need to know how to deal with people. You need to know how to interact. And beyond just work, you need to also be personal. So how was your family? How's this? How was your vacation? How are your kids? How, really going into building those interpersonal skills. Forward thinking, so always, again, not thinking of now, but also looking into the future and always thinking, okay, what can we do next? What are things, like a lot of times we think, and I feel like especially as a community, we think very short term. We think, okay, we have this problem, let's fix it. But a leader doesn't just fix problems right away. We never put bandages on problems. We're ready to do that open heart surgery. Like, let's get this done. Let's think about the long-term solution. Okay, this is what we're trying to get to. How can we get to that point? Not in a year, not in 2 years, maybe in 10, 15, 20 years. Keeping that big picture and forward thinking in mind. And this is also very important, intellectual, emotional, and social intelligence. So a lot of times, especially in our community, we put a lot of emphasis on intellectual intelligence. Oh, my son got the highest grade in this, my son went to this school and that school. But we forget that 2 other intelligences are very, very important, which is emotional and social intelligence. We need to be able to read other people's emotions, know how to interact with them. Understand, okay, this person's acting this way. It's not always A, B. There's other things that are in play. And again, going back to that diagram and knowing that there's a lot of different things that can affect that person. And lastly is motivation. I want to say that leadership is one of those things that if you don't wake up every day being motivated to continue doing, it's very easy for you to go down a downward slope. So it's not only the external motivation, which always helps, like those wins, but it's that internal motivation and going back to the idea of that cause that's driving you to continue doing what you're doing. So building on that, so those are 10 characteristics of a good leader. Now we have 10 things, because I like to be practical. So there's 10 things that you can go home and do and will help you begin to become a better leader. Which is, go back to your teams, go back to your families, because I'm a big believer that leadership is not only on like organizational levels. I think it's even in the household. So if you're a mom, you're a leader of your kids. If you're a dad, you're a leader of the house, you're a leader of the kids in the household. If you're, whatever relationship you have, there is that same idea. So you can take these home, even if you're not in like a leadership position in your job or professionally, you can take these home on a personal level. So one is maximize individual strengths. This one is so important. We really need to focus that every person you have has strengths to them. Every person you have, the way I think about it is everyone you meet has certain keys, right? And your job as their leader is to find out how to unlock their keys. Like what keys go where to help unlock them, unlock their best potential. And that is your job, is to figure out and have those conversations. Hey, what are some things that you like to do? What are things that you enjoy doing? What are things that bring you a motivation and joy and make you feel good? And build on them. And then you also look at this, you look at the opportunities of growth, or you look at the weaknesses, but that's not the main focus, because if somebody builds their confidence through their strengths, then everything else is gonna follow, right? Their weaknesses, they'll get better at their weaknesses. But if we constantly focus on, you know what, you're not really good at this area, you're not really good at that area, you need work on this, do you think that they're ever really gonna grow? Maybe marginally, maybe a little bit, but if you continue to focus on their strengths, they'll improve in their strengths and potentially also improve in their weaknesses, which is the best thing that you want. The other thing is with leadership is somebody doesn't need to have all the strengths in the world. So when you have a team, somebody could be really good with money, for example. One person could be really good with interpersonal skills. The other person could be really good with, curriculum development or whatever it may be. And you have to find their strengths and realize, you know what? I don't need the ultimate person that has all the strengths. I can have the team that I can divide the strengths and I can work with them to make sure that their strengths are the best strengths that there is. The second thing is balance the needs of your team. So building on what I'm saying, that when you have a team, your job is to look at, you can't just focus on what your needs are, which are to accomplish the goal, but sometimes your teams need specific things to get to specific areas. What I like to call this is, I think everybody in the world has a quote-unquote user manual. You know, when you have a car or you have something new that you're trying to set up, it comes with a user manual. Well, each and every one of us also have a user manual. Right? Each of us have a user manual to understand how we function the best. And so as a leader, your job is to encourage your team to find their own or understand their own user manuals and help to work with them to develop it. The third one is working as a team. So leadership is not a one-man show. It never is. And I think a lot of times we tend to think it is. I'm a leader if I do everything. That's actually the opposite of a leader, right? And it takes time to get to that point, because again, if you think about the 5 levels of leadership, you're still on level 1, which is like, okay, I'm gonna try to do everything. You need to work as a team, and working as a team means finding ways to make sure that you're balancing the needs of your teams and maximizing on their strengths. And mobilizing others. So you need to continue beyond your team. You need to be able to motivate and mobilize others. So find ways to mobilize others in your team. Find ways to, not in your team, beyond your team. Find ways to encourage people to keep working towards your common goal. Now, this is one of my favorites, which is establishing buy-in. So a lot of times, as leaders, we come in, we'll be sitting, like, wherever, thinking about something, and we come in, and we're like, okay, guys, this is what we're gonna do today. And we expect everybody to be on board. And when they're not, we get upset. And it's like, but put yourself in their shoes. Let's practice some empathy, right? Wouldn't you be upset if somebody came in and said, hey, this is a great idea, we're just gonna do it, right? So we need to practice the art of establishing buy-in. And again, this is something you can also do in your families and all your other relationships, which is, okay, guys, I have this idea. Let's talk about it. I have an idea I want to do, I want to open a park. Let's think. Let's have a conversation. What do we all think? And then people say, I don't know if that's a great idea. And then we sit down, we bounce off each other's idea until we come up with an idea where we all are bought into this idea. We've established that buy-in with everybody. And then when come time to execute the idea, guess what? It's no longer a one-man show. You have your team. They've built that buy-in. They're as excited about this park as you are, and they're ready to get to work. So a huge part that we miss is establishing this buy-in. The other thing is lead by example. So the Prophet ﷺ was the best of this. He never said or did anything without doing it himself, right? So it's the idea that if you're going to ask somebody to do it, you need to be willing to do it yourself. And I don't know the exact Sahaba, but I know that there was a story, and Sheikh Musa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember there was a story that he was in a position of leadership, and what he would do every night, he would go when everyone went home, and he would clean the masjid completely, clean the floor, clean everything. And then one person walked in at one point and said, "Why are you doing this?" And he said, "This is how I stay humble. This is how I remember that anyone can do any job," right? So it's really about this idea of leading by example. If you're going to be asking somebody to do something, you better as heck be ready to do it yourself, right? So you need to be able to do it, And let's say you're going through a tough period and you're saying, you know what, everybody, like for example, Ramadan's coming up. And I know for a lot of organizations, fundraising is the first thing. I can't ask my team, hey guys, everybody, you guys all fundraise and I'll see you when I see you. And inshallah, by the end of the month, we're going to reach our goal. But if I come in and I'm like, okay guys, I've already contacted X and I've contacted Y and I've already gotten these pledges done, wouldn't they also be motivated to do the same? So that's one example. And then think about it also in your personal lives. If you're trying to teach your kids things, what's the number one thing you have to do? You have to model that behavior. You have to show that. So if you want your kids to pray, you better be praying. If you want your kids to be coming to the masjid, you have to be coming to the masjid. So it's leading by example. The other thing is practicing being accountable to the community. So your community, as a community leader, they are your number one goal, right? So you need to make sure that you are being and staying accountable to your community. So whenever you're doing something, you don't just do it and think, oh, okay, khalas, I did my job. It's how would the community respond to this? And again, if we're going to take it back to our family lives, how would my family respond to this? How would my kids respond to this? Because at the end of the day, I'm in this position of leadership, leading these people, and I have to make sure I'm constantly keeping that in mind. The other one, again, is thinking forward. So let's practice thinking forward. Let's try to stay away from thinking of now in the short term and thinking beyond. So every step we're taking, let's think about, okay, how can this little step, what is the aftermath of it? What's going to be the next step? What's going to happen afterwards? And then thinking that way and then thinking backwards. So thinking forward and then thinking backwards to make that happen. Recruiting new leaders. So this is a very important thing. A lot of times we think, especially with a lot of our politics in the Middle East, we think we're good to be presidents for the rest of our lives, or good to be in positions of power for the rest of our lives. The reality is that part of leadership is looking for the talent and recruiting the new leaders that will replace you one day when you decide not to do this anymore, or when you decide to go on to a different phase in your life. This should be an active part of everyone's leadership. Active. Like every day trying to think of succession planning. What's going to happen next? Who's going to take on my role? How can I make sure that there is a model of people that are in here that I can continue to motivate, continue to train so that they can take on these roles? And the last one, which I think is a great way to summarize it, is walk beside, don't lead from above, right? So when you're a community leader, we're walking together. We're not walking from above. We're walking together. We're walking towards a goal together. We're going to put all of our hands in the pot and we're going to work together. We're going to brainstorm and we're going to figure out things together. This, again, doesn't mean, because when you look at organizational leadership, it doesn't mean that everybody is going to be doing everything, because that also doesn't make sense. But it means that if I'm getting ready to get on this endeavor, we better all be getting ready to get on this endeavor. And like an example of this is, I remember, I think one of the last talks I gave in NHIEC was about the phones and about social media. And I said, I was like, you know, I'm guilty of this a lot, is I'm trying to limit my kids' screen time. And my daughter comes to me and says, you're on your phone all the time. I'm like, you know what, you're right, right? So it's something I'm working on. So I'm walking beside, not leading from above. I'm not saying, I'm your mom, stop talking to me that way. Saying, you know what, I'm gonna work on my own phone habits. So we can take these concepts on a personal level and a professional level and look at it also as community leaders and how can we develop these. Lastly, I have a video. I don't know if it will play, but this is basically leadership summarized, and this is taking everything that we talked about. And basically the idea of this video is leadership is an ongoing forever journey. You can't wake up the next day thinking, khalas, I decided I'm gonna become a leader, and the next morning you're gonna wake up a leader. It doesn't work that way, right? It's taking tiny steps every single day to make sure it happens. And the Prophet ﷺ had the best hadith where he said, خير الأعمال, I mess this up all the time, but the best, yes, أدومه انقل. So the best of deeds are the smallest deeds as long as they're done consistently. So if this plays, if not, I think I pretty much.
Do you love your wife? Yes. Prove it. Like, what's the metric? Give me the number that helps me know, right? Because when you met her, you didn't love her. Now you love her. Right? Tell me the day the love happened. It's an impossible question. But it's not that it doesn't exist, it's that it's much easier to prove over time, right? Leadership is the same thing. It's about transitions. So if you were to go to the gym, it's like exercise, right? If you go to the gym and you work out and you come back and you look in the mirror, you will see nothing. And if you go to the gym the next day and you come back and you look in the mirror, you will see Nothing, right? So clearly there's no results, can't be measured, it must not be effective. So we quit, right? Or, if you fundamentally believe that this is the right course of action and you stick with it, like in a relationship, I bought her flowers and I wished her happy birthday, and she doesn't love me. Clearly I'll give up. That's not what happens. If you believe there's something there, you commit yourself to an act of service. You commit yourself to the regime, the exercise. You can screw it up. You can eat chocolate cake one day, you can skip a day or two. You know, it allows for that. But if you stick with it consistently, I'm not exactly sure what day, but I know you'll start getting into shape. I know. And the same with the relationship. It's not about the events. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency, right? You go to the dentist twice a year, your teeth will fall out. You have to brush your teeth every day for 2 minutes. What does brushing your teeth twice a day for 2 minutes do? Nothing. Unless you do it every day, twice a day for 2 minutes. Right? It's the consistency. Going to the gym for 9 hours does not get you into shape. Working out every day for 20 minutes gets you into shape. So the problem is we treat leadership with intensity. We have a 2-day offsite, we invite a bunch of speakers, we give everybody a certificate. You're a leader, right? Those things are like going to the dentist. They're very important. They're good for reminding us or getting us back on track, learning new lessons. But it's the daily practice of all the monotonous, little boring things like brushing your teeth that matter the most. She didn't fall in love with you because you remembered her birthday and bought her flowers on Valentine's Day. She fell in love with you because when you woke up in the morning, you said good morning to her before you checked your phone. She fell in love with you because when you went to the fridge to get yourself a drink, you got her one without even asking. She fell in love with you because when you had an amazing day at work, and she came home and she had a terrible day at work, you didn't say, yeah, but let me tell you about my day. You sat and listened to her awful day, and you didn't say a thing about your amazing day. This is why she fell in love with you. I can't tell you exactly what day, and it was no particular thing you did. It was the accumulation of all of those little things that she woke up one day and as if she pressed a button, she goes, I love you. Right? Leadership is exactly the same. There's no event. There's no thing I can tell you you have to do that your people will trust you. It just doesn't work that way. It's an accumulation of lots and lots of little things that anyone by themselves is innocuous and useless. Literally, pointless by themselves. People will look at little things that are good leadership practices and say, that won't work. And you're absolutely right. But if you do it consistently, and you do it in combination with lots of other little things, like saying good morning to someone, then looking in the eye. My friend George, who's a 3-star general in the Marine Corps, he says his test for leadership, and I love this, he goes, his test for a good leader is if you ask somebody how their day is going, you actually care about the answer. The number of times we're walking to a meeting, we're rushing, we go, how are you? Not good, I gotta get to you later, I'm late for a meeting. If you ask the question, you were standing there and you were listening to the answer. It's those little innocuous things that you do over and over and over and over that people will say, I love my job. But I like my job. I like my job means, yeah, the challenge is great, they pay me well, I like the people. I love my job means, I don't want to work anywhere else. I don't care how much somebody else is willing to pay me. I'm devoted to the people here, and I care desperately about the people here as if they were my family. In business, we have colleagues and coworkers. In the military, they have brothers and sisters. That's how they think of each other. If you really have a strong corporate culture, the people will think of each other like brothers and sisters. It's like a family, right? No, brothers and sisters. Deep love. Fight, but the love doesn't go away. Bicker, the love doesn't go away. And I'll fight with my sister, but if you threaten my sister, you're gonna have to deal with me. Right? We'll fight internally, we'll bicker with each other, but nobody's gonna hurt each other, and if anything from the outside shows up, you're looking at a unified front. Brothers and sisters. Now, how do you create brothers and sisters out of strangers? Common beliefs, common values. You know, parents, in other words, executives who care about their children's success, who care to raise their children, teach them skills, discipline them when necessary, help them build their self-confidence so that they can go on and achieve something more than you could have ever imagined achieving for yourself. That's leadership.
So I hope you all see why I love this video. I think it perfectly summarizes everything we spoke about. And subhanAllah, while listening to this video, even though I watched it a few times, I was actually thinking that, again, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is like the ultimate, he's the pinnacle of leadership. Because I think in many ways, the idea of Islam is exactly creating what he's saying, this idea of brotherhood, where we are achieving our ultimate best potential, where we love to be Muslims, where we love to be part of this community. So I want to end with a final message, which is, I want us all to think, what is that little thing, based on everything that we talked about today, that you can start doing today? And remember, like he said, it may not have an effect today, not tomorrow, not even in a year, but it's going to have an effect eventually and you're going to see it. So it's really starting with that little thing and committing to it. Sorry, I'm just trying to get out of this.
Prove it. Like, what's the
Sorry, okay. So that's what I have for you all today. Jazakumullahu khairan for listening. Does anyone have any questions or comments or concerns? I hope you all liked it. Jazakallahu khairan. Thank you. Jazakallahu khairan. So does anyone have any questions, anything? If not, then we're good. Thank you all for the opportunity, and I love this masjid, and thank you all for doing this. This is a very important conversation, and like he said in the video, like this is not meant to be just a one-off, like it's something that we continuously work on every day, inshallah. So jazakallahu khairan for the opportunity.
الناس بتشوف لغة في الخاف. الناس بتشوف كلمة لغة في الخاف. يلا ربنا يكرمك ان شاء الله. متشكرين جدا. معلومات قيمة بصراحة. ربنا يبارك فيك. You know?